Halloween season is upon us, and that means it's time to look at some D&D monsters that you can sprinkle in to make things a little extra spooky here in October. I'm John from dumbestdnd, and today we're taking a look at 19 terrifying monsters. We've got a list of creatures from across official D&D books that will send shivers down your players' spines and have them turning all the lights on in their house. Now, in no particular order. Number 1, the Bodak. From Volo's Guide to Monsters, the Bodak is an undead horror that strikes fear into the hearts of adventurers, leveraging its aura of annihilation to deal 5 necrotic damage to players, ending their turn within 30 feet. Once a living creature, a Bodak is the result of a mortal being consumed by darkness and twisted by demonic powers, and often linked to the demon lord Orcus. This transformation leaves the creature as a husk, stripped of its soul and left with only an unquenchable hatred for all life. What makes a Bodak truly terrifying, though, is its death gaze. Just meeting its empty, soulless eyes can drain the life from a creature instantly, leaving them lifeless on the ground. Its very presence emanates an aura of dread and decay, unsettling all who encounter it. Moreover, Bodaks are relentless hunters, driven by an instinct to snuff out life wherever they find it. They resist most forms of damage, making them difficult to put down, and while they avoid sunlight, they stalk the shadows with a single-minded determination. The Bodak serves as a grim reminder of the horrifying fate awaiting those who dare to meddle with demonic forces and undeath. Use the Bodak as a sign that your campaign's delving into darker territory. Let players hear stories of people being found with their eyes charred out, terrified expressions on their face. Number 2, Nothic. The Nothic is one of D&D's most unsettling monsters, and it's not because it's the strongest or the most dangerous. It's because of what it represents. The grim fate of those who seek forbidden knowledge at any cost. With 45 HP and 15 AC, a Nothic was once a wizard, someone who peered too deeply into secrets mortals were never meant to uncover. Now, cursed by dark arcane forces, it's transformed into a twisted, aberrant creature, a fate worse than death for any seeker of magic. A hunched humanoid with an awkward gait, likely from its horrible death perception, it's the Nothic's eye, a single massive unblinking eye that captures you, that sees you. This eye is the Nothic's most horrifying weapon. With it, the Nothic can peer into your mind, unearthing your darkest secrets, your hidden desires, and your crippling fears. It knows you in ways that, honestly, no monster and probably no player ever should. And if that wasn't enough, it can use its rotting gaze to literally wither your flesh, leaving adventurers stumbling away, clutching wounds that feel like they've been struck by death itself. Nothics skulk around dungeons and ruins, babbling to itself, scavenging secrets in a vain hope to reverse its curse. When a Nothic stalks the party, it's not just a monster encounter at that point. It's a stark warning of the perils of pursuing power at the expense of one's sanity and humanity. Number 3, Shadow. I love using shadows in my Ghost of Saltmarsh campaign. They're only CR 1.5, or CR 1.5, but man, they are spooky. Shadows in D&D are a nightmare given form, a haunting reminder that death can come not just from flesh and bone, but from darkness itself. These creatures are the twisted remnants of once living souls reduced to nothing more than malevolent darkness, forever prowling the forgotten corners of the world. They're not just your average undead. They are hunger, pure and simple, driven to consume the life force of anything warm and living. Imagine this. You're delving deep into an ancient crypt. The air is cold, and the light from your torch flickers. Suddenly, the shadows on the walls start to move, not because of the flame, but on their own. They shift, twist, and separate, taking on a vaguely humanoid shape. Then, it lunges. Its touch is like the icy grip of death itself, draining the very strength from your limbs. The more it drains, the weaker you become, until there's nothing left of you other than a lifeless husk. And here's the kicker. When you die to a shadow, you then become a shadow. Your soul is lost, twisted into another predator of the dark. What makes shadows worthy of this list isn't just their ability to sap your strength, it's their relentlessness. They blend perfectly into the darkness, making them nearly impossible to spot before they strike. No amount of physical might can fully protect you from their touch. They force adventurers to confront an enemy that can't be killed with mere steel, an enemy that attacks the very essence of their being, kind of like the monster in the basement that we all grew up with. Shadows are a chilling reminder that in D&D, sometimes the darkness itself is alive, hungry, and waiting, just outside the light. Number 4, Nilbog. The Nilbog is one of the most chaotic and bizarre threats in the D&D world, a walking prank on the natural order itself. Goblins are already a nuisance, but the Nilbog takes that to a whole new level. Born from sheer chaos and spite, this CR1 small goblinoid is a goblin possessed by a trickster spirit, a spirit of rebellion against goblin subjugation, and it flips the script on adventurers in the most maddening way possible. You see, when goblin tribes are oppressed or forced into submission for too long, the essence of mischief and trickery fights back, and a Nilbog is born. This creature doesn't just cause mayhem, it thrives on it. Its magic warps reality around it, making it an unpredictable force that turns combat into an absurd game. Try to harm it, your blows won't land. In fact, hurting a Nilbog actually heals it. And just when you think things couldn't get weirder or more unsettling, its Nilbogism ability lets it seize control of those who dare to exert their will over it, turning them into bumbling fools dancing to the Nilbog's tune. It's horror at another level when it comes to a Nilbog. But the scariest part of a Nilbog isn't its chaotic powers, it's the mockery it represents. The Nilbog laughs in the face of control, subverting the natural pecking order that most adventurers take for granted. It forces the party to rethink their strategies, to realize that sometimes brute force and magic won't work when dealing with sheer embodiment of nonsense. It's not just a creature, it's an event, a living embodiment of a goblin spite that turns a straightforward goblin encounter into a chaotic and unpredictable mess. Number 5. Boneclaw. Boneclaw's ready! Standing nearly 10 feet tall and born from failed lichdom, a Boneclaw is the twisted remnant of a wizard who sought eternal undeath, but lacked the will to fully embrace the process. Rather than becoming a powerful lich, they transformed into something far more terrifying. A skeletal horror driven by malice and a hunger for death, and an overwhelming sense of failure, I assume. These CR12 large undead are gaunt, skeletal figures with sinew and rotten flesh clinging to their bones. Its most terrifying feature? Well, that's the impossibly long, razor-sharp claws that extend from its fingers, capable of skewering prey from a distance with brutal precision. I mean, seriously, look at these bad boys. How are you going to tie your shoes with those long fingies? It stalks the living with an eerie silence, hunting in shadows and striking without warning. But it's not just its physical power that makes the Boneclaw spooky. It's bound to a dark master. When a wizard's transformation fails, their twisted soul latches onto a nearby creature with a deeply evil will, turning the Boneclaw into an instrument of their vile desires. What makes the Boneclaw a true nightmare is that it's nearly impossible to destroy. Even if you shatter its bones, if its master is still around, the Boneclaw simply reforms, returning again and again and again to torment its victims. It's not just a battle of might. Defeating a Boneclaw means confronting the twisted evil that commands it. When a Boneclaw appears, it's not just a sign of danger, it's the embodiment of a wizard's failure, and a corrupting force that will haunt the party until its master is dealt with. And, again, the fingers. Number 6, the Cloaker. Garnering its name from its false appearance as a dark leather cloak, great fitting name, Cloakers bring a kind of classic horror vibe to your game. The moment a hapless adventurer gets close, this CR8 large aberration strikes, unfurling to reveal a gaping maw full of razor-sharp teeth and rows of glowing red eyes. This is no simple ambush predator, though. It's an intelligent, cunning horror that thrives on fear and confusion. When a Cloaker attacks, it doesn't just try to overwhelm its prey with brute force, though its ability to bite, attach, and transfer the damage it takes is pretty gnarly. Cloakers can also emit a haunting, unearthly moan that reverberates through the darkness. No, not the good kind. Filling the air with dread and sending shivers down the spines of even the bravest of adventurers. The sound can disorient or frighten those who hear it. While adventurers are distracted and panicking, the Cloaker strikes, wrapping itself around its victims like a living cloak, smothering and biting and then suffocating them to death with their grip. Keep the Cloaker in mind the next time you see an ordinary cloak just hanging on the back of a chair. I'm sure it's fine. Number 7, the Gibbering Mouther. If you want to crank up the creepiness to 11, introduce a Gibbering Mouther. This thing is an amalgamation of mouths and eyes, constantly chattering and maddening, nonsensical whispers. The gibbering ability creates an aura of confusion, making players lose control of their actions, while its aberrant ground ability turns the battlefield into a quagmire within 10 feet of itself. The horror doesn't stop there, though. The creature's body is an amorphous ooze, shifting and changing shape, spewing out acidic spittle that blinds and burns. It can engulf you, its mouths attaching and latching on from all directions, biting and gnawing until there's really nothing left. And once it devours you, you become a part of it, your voice adding to the chorus of insanity that spills out of its many mouths. Sounds like a great eternity. Once it's consumed enough wandering adventures, the mouther rips itself in half, producing an entirely separate jibbing mouther. Absolutely disgusting. These CR2 aberrations fit perfectly in nightmare realms, corrupted forests, or abandoned temples. Enjoy. Number 8, the Night Hag. Unlike ordinary monsters, night hags are not just physical threats. They are cunning, manipulative, and born from the wickedness of the lower planes. These are grotesque crones with withered dark blue skin, eyes like burning coals, and talons sharp enough to, well, just slice through bone. Who doesn't want that? But it's not their appearance alone that puts them on this list. It's the malevolent schemes they weave and the horrors they bring to the dreams of mortals. You see, night hags are predators of the soul. By slipping into the ethereal plane, they can visit sleeping victims, haunting their dreams and slowly draining their vitality. Over time, the process corrupts the souls of their prey, twisting it with nightmares and despair. The hag's goal? Well, it's to render the soul so wretched that it becomes a worthy commodity for the lower planes and they can trade it around. And once the soul is rotted enough, the hag can capture it in a cursed gemstone, adding it to their gruesome collection. But it doesn't stop there. Night hags are master manipulators, often forming deals with mortals that seem too tempting to refuse. They barter with dark knowledge, forbidden magic, and potions that cure all ailments, but their bargains always come at a terrible cost. Behind every deal lies an intention to ensnare the victim in a web of suffering, ensuring that their soul is ripe for the taking. Night hags aren't just monsters you fight. They're an evil you survive. When one appears in your campaign, it's not merely an encounter. It's a creeping psychological horror that haunts the party long after the hag is gone. Don't believe me? Look up Night Hag Soulbag. Number 9, Revenant. For a more personal horror, or for fans of the movie It Follows, consider introducing a Revenant, especially if there was an early game NPC that the party offed without much thought. Maybe they were betrayed, murdered, cast aside, and that sheer unfiltered rage they felt as a result, well, it pulls this CR5 undead right back from the grave. Not as a ghost, not as some mindless zombie, but as a revenant, a relentless engine of vengeance with one purpose: to find the one who wronged them and make them pay. Here's the thing, you can't just swing a sword and hope this nightmare goes away. You can shatter its bones, burn its flesh, blast it with strongest magic you've got, and all you've done is buy yourself 24 hours, because it will always come back. Always comes back. The body reforms, ready to resume its hunt with that same burning hatred in its eyes. You can't talk your way out. You can't beg, you can't plead. It's got your name, your scent, and a grudge that spans planes, and it is constantly following you. Revenant's got roughly half a year to get its revenge. If it succeeds, poof, it is gone, crumbles to dust, its mission complete. But if it fails, it fades away, consumed by its own bitter failure. Revenant encounter is a grim reminder that some wrongs just won't stay buried. It's the embodiment of consequences in D&D. A monster that isn't just out for blood, it's out for justice. And it's not stopping until it gets what it came for. Number 10, Starspawn. If you're looking to add some cosmic horror to your game, the Starspawn are your go-to monsters. They come in various forms, each representing the horrors of the far realm. Starspawn Mangler in particular is great for sneaky, ambush-based horror. These creatures create an unnerving vibe when players know that something alien and wrong is hunting them. Use them sparingly to create a sense of dread and the unknown. Starspawn are twisted servants of the Great Old Ones, being so ancient that they make gods look like specks of dust. These things don't just enter our reality, though. They warp it. They come in different forms, hulking brutes, skittering creepers, or reality-warping sorcerers. When they appear, shadows darken, the air turns cold, and suddenly the stars seem more like eyes than distant lights. But here's the real horror. They don't just break your body. They break your mind. Their attacks twist reality, leaving you questioning what's real. It's not just a fight. It's a nightmare you can't wake up from. You're not battling a monster. You're facing the universe's indifference. Win or lose, you come away knowing one thing. You're a tiny speck in an uncaring cosmos. Feel very like Rust Cole right now. Number 11, the Banshee. Banshees are one of those encounters that remind you why the undead are feared. In life, a Banshee was once a beautiful elf who grew vain and cruel, turning away from the grace of their kin. When they died, their spirit was twisted by their own bitterness and spite, transforming into a haunting Banshee. More presence of these CR4 undead warps the environment around it. Flowers wilt, water turns foul, and an unnatural chill settles in the air. It's not just another ghost, it's the embodiment of regret and anger, and it brings misery wherever it goes. And then there's the whale. When it screams, it's not just a noise, it's a blast of pure, soul-crushing despair. Everyone within earshot feels their courage drain away, their heart clench with fear, and their will to fight just kind of disappears. If you're lucky enough to catch the full brunt of that wail, your body might simply give up, dropping you to 0 HP. It's not about strength or skill. The Banshee's wail is about breaking you on a level that no sword or spell can defend against. Surviving a Banshee encounter leaves a mark. That scream stays with you, echoing in your mind, reminding you of your own mortality and the things left undone. Adventurers who encounter a Banshee aren't just fighting a monster. They're facing a spirit that died with too much anger and too many regrets. Been there. Number 12, Beholder Zombie. The Beholder Zombie is a twisted, undead version of the iconic Beholder in D&D. Its eye rays still function, albeit less reliably, but it's the grotesque undead aesthetic that makes it truly horrifying. Imagine a decaying beholder with rotting flesh and eye stalks that are just twitching erratically. And don't think for a second that it's a pushover just because it's undead. This thing still wields some of the deadly magic it had when it was alive. Those rotting eyes can still fire rays that paralyze, weaken, and harm anyone foolish enough to stand in its path. Sure, it's slower and less cunning than a living beholder, but its undead nature makes it relentless. It doesn't scheme or plan, it simply destroys, driven by a mindless urge to kill. Consider using the Beholder Zombie in an abandoned lair or a necromancer's dungeon where failed experiments linger, adding a layer of dread and surprise to an already terrifying creature. Number 13, Death Tyrant. While we're on the topic, an even darker and more powerful version of the Beholder Zombie, the Death Tyrant is a floating skull brimming with necrotic energy. It's perfect for high-level parties with its 150-foot negative energy cone that prevents healing, and even worse, if a humanoid dies in the cone, they become a zombie that is under the control of the Death Tyrant. The Tyrant itself, well, its flesh decays, leaving a floating skull with no eye stalks, and the ends of it are just eerie necrotic light. This is no ordinary undead. It's the Beholder's spite and the will made manifest, clawing back from death to continue its reign of terror. Don't let its skeletal form fool you. This thing is just as deadly. Just ask their 3 legendary actions. Number 14, Ghast. Ghasts are the twisted evolution of ghouls, created from the most vile and wicked souls. Unlike their lesser counterparts, Ghasts possess a horrifying cunning and an aura of decay so potent it poisons the air around them. A CR2 undead, their sinewy, rotting bodies are tougher, their movements quicker, and their eyes glow with an unsettling hunger. More than just mindless undead, they have enough intelligence to organize ambushes and coordinate with other ghouls, transforming any encounter into a deadly trap. A single rake of their filthy claws can paralyze even the strongest warriors, leaving them helpless and vulnerable to the ghast's ravenous appetite. As if that weren't enough, their putrid stench overwhelms the senses, sickening those unfortunate enough to be near them. Fighting Ghast means battling both the creature and the nausea it induces, all while trying to avoid its paralyzing grip and coordinated strikes of its ghoul minions. Easy peasy. Number 15, Deathlock. Deathlocks are the tragic remnants of warlocks who have failed their dark patrons. When a warlock breaks their pact or falls short of their master's demands, they aren't simply cast aside. They're transformed. Deathlocks are what remains, decayed, hollow versions of their former selves, cursed to wander the world as undead servants. Their eyes glow with an unnatural light, and their bodies are gaunt, twisted by the dark magic that now chains them to their master's will. Despite their ruined state, Deathlocks retain much of their magical prowess. They wield eldritch spells with grim efficiency, calling upon the remnants of the dark power they once commanded in life. In practice, this looks like third-level Arms of Hadar and Hunger of Hadar, as well as Eldritch Blast. Often this CR4 undead will lead packs of other undead, animating the corpses around them to serve as minions in their endless quest to fulfill their patron's will. An encounter with a Deathlock is a grim reminder of the price of failed ambitions and broken oaths, as these creatures lash out with bitter magic, seeking to complete the tasks that bind them to their cursed existence. 16. Vampire Spawn. Vampire Spawn are the cursed thralls of a true vampire, bound to a life of bloodlust and servitude. Unlike their vampiric masters, they have no freedom, are forced to obey every command of the one who turned them. Their bodies retain a twisted semblance of their former beauty, now marked by an eerie pallor and eyes that glow with a predatory red light. No problem. They move through the darkness with an unsettling grace, constantly on the hunt for their next victim. Though they lack the full power of true vampires, they are far from mere minions. At CR5, their strength is inhuman, and their claws can tear through flesh with a vicious ease. The bite of a vampire spawn doesn't just inflict pain, it drains life itself, leaving their victims numb and weakened with reduced max HP. Even worse, they possess a host of resistances. Ordinary weapons barely slow them down, and they regenerate wounds rapidly unless exposed to sunlight or holy magic. Facing off against a vampire spawn is a fight for survival against a creature that really knows no fear, feels no pain, and lives only to satisfy its endless hunger, much like many of us with our dead robot hearts. Number 17, the Wight. Another spooky monster with life drain, wights are undead warriors, once living beings whose souls were twisted by dark, unholy power. You sensing a trend? They aren't mindless like zombies, nor are they as detached as ghosts. A wight retains a shadow of its former self, its intelligence, cruelty, and the grim memory of life. Their skin is pale and withered, eyes glowing with a hateful cold light. Clad in decaying armor, they haunt crypts, battlefields, and ruins, driven by an insatiable desire to snuff out the life they have lost. These creatures are far more dangerous than simple undead. Armed with weapons they once wielded in life, a wight's touch drains the very essence of the living, weakening their prey with every strike. To make matters worse, those slain by a wight won't stay dead for long. They rise again as mindless zombies under the wight's command. This turns each encounter into a deadly cycle, as the party must not only face the wight's fury, but also the growing horde of undead it creates. In facing a wight, adventurers are forced into a desperate struggle against a creature that embodies death's hunger and will stop at nothing to spread its dark influence. Number 18, the Nightwalker. The only huge creature on this list and the only CR20, so let's be really probably not going to use it, but Nightwalkers are death incarnate. Colossal shadows that stalk the material plane with an aura of pure destruction. They're not just monsters, they're living embodiments of the negative plane's hunger for life. Towering at over 20 feet tall, these CR20 skeletal giants are cloaked in darkness. Fun stuff. Their forms vaguely humanoid, but twisted and stretched with eyes burning like cold, distant stars. When a Nightwalker emerges, the air grows frigid and shadows cling to every surface as if the world itself is recoiling from its presence. No big deal. What makes a Nightwalker so terrifying is not just its size or power, but the void of life that surrounds it. Any creature caught in its grasp feels their very essence being drained away. Yes, more life drain. Worse yet, those who die at the hands of a Nightwalker don't get a peaceful rest. Their souls are pulled into the negative plane, leaving nothing but a cold, empty shell behind, with only a wish spell capable of reviving them. Fighting Nightwalker isn't just a test of strength. It's a race to avoid the oblivion it brings. Sounds like my Tuesdays. And finally, we close with one of my personal favorites, the Wraith. Wraiths are the perfect undead turducken of death, given form and pure malevolence, all wrapped in darkness. They aren't ghosts or lingering spirits, they are creatures of pure hate, born from souls that were torn from the cycle of life and twisted into something far worse. A Wraith appears as a shadowy figure, draped in a swirling black mist, eyes glowing with a fierce cold light. It moves silently, gliding through walls and solid barriers, always lurking just out of reach. Especially spooky is their ability to drain life with touch. Catch the trend? When they strike, it's not just your health that suffers, it's your essence, your very vitality being ripped away. And death at the hands of a Wraith is not the end. Those slain rise again as specters, enslaved to the Wraith's will. It doesn't just attack, it multiplies its forces with every kill, turning each encounter into a growing thunderdome of death. Battling Wraith is a desperate fight against a creature that thrives on death and leaves nothing but cold emptiness in its wake. So there you have it. 19 monsters to bring the scares to your campaign this October. These creatures are sure to create the atmosphere of suspense, dread, and maybe a little bit of frustration. In the best way possible, of course. Whether you want to add psychological horror, body horror, or just some classic spooky fun, these monsters have you covered. If you've used any of these monsters in your own game, let me know how it went. And if you want some more lighthearted content around spooky characters or parodies of movies, just keep an eye on this channel, subscribe, and check out our encounters that are upcoming over the next month. Till next time, I'm John from dumbestdnd. Thanks for watching, roll high, and stay ridiculous.